Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Strangers in Jerusalem YouTube channel. Thank you for the support. Before we get to the clip, please subscribe and like the video, and also check out my book. You can get it on Amazon. It's called A Stranger in Jerusalem, Seeing Jesus as a Jew. Alongside those Son of Man traditions are a number of other Messianic traditions we see them in early Jewish texts. Perhaps the most prominent Messianic theme among these texts is the idea that the Son of Man will descend from the tribe of Judah through David. So in Genesis 49 and Isaiah 11, these passages serve as the primary sources for this idea. So in Genesis 49, it says, the scepter, that's a Messianic language, kingship language. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. And then in Isaiah 11 it says, and there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Many Jews during this era, during the generation of Jesus and right before, interpreted these passages messianically. For example, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a commentary on the book of Genesis. This is one of the first biblical commentaries that we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This text was found in Cave 4 at Qumran, and it maintained that this future Judahite king would be the righteous Messiah, the branch of David. The Psalms of Solomon, this is a mid-1st century BC text. This text harks back to 2 Samuel 7, wherein God promises David that his offspring will be God's son, if you remember that passage, and will establish an everlasting throne. And it's what it says there. See, Lord, and raise up for them their king, the son of David, to rule over your servant Israel in the time known to you, O God, and their king shall be the Lord Messiah. Another common theme or emergent theme, Messianic theme in early Jewish texts is that the Messiah would have a worldwide following and worldwide authority. He will be praised universally by all people. In this role, the Messiah will judge the wicked and punish Israel's enemies. Several Dead Sea texts, for example, assert that heaven and earth shall listen to his Messiah. And another text states that the rulers of Israel will sit before him and that others will be handed over to the sword when the Messiah comes. Also in the Psalms of Solomon, the Messiah will lead the righteous and will have Gentile nations serving him under his yoke, and he will expose officials and drive out sinners. Another text, Sibylline Oracles, which is another 1st century BC text, declares that God will send a king who will stop the entire earth from evil war, killing some, imposing oaths of loyalty on others. The expectation of a warrior Messiah who would fight Israel's foreign enemies may have been justified based on Isaiah 45. So in this passage, again, this is the only time that the word Messiah is mentioned in Isaiah. It says, thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to his Messiah, Mashiach, to Cyrus, remember Cyrus of Persia, whose right hand I have grasped to subdue nations before him. So this language here might serve as an idea that the Messiah will be a warrior figure who will subdue the nations. Some Jews, particularly those at Qumran, as we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls, also expected the Messiah to perform miracles. One Dead Sea Scroll text, also found in Cave 4, states the following. His Messiah will honor the pious upon the throne of his eternal kingdom, setting prisoners free, opening the eyes of the blind, raising up those who are bowed down. He shall heal the critically wounded, shall revive the dead, and he shall send good news to the afflicted. So now we get texts that are closer to the time of Jesus that kind of shows the miraculous aspects of the Messiah. It seems clear from all these sources that it was during the first 2 centuries before Jesus' ministry that the idea of a divine agent of God who would redeem Israel, delivering them from bondage, became more widely accepted, or at least more apparent among the Jewish population. Whatever earlier Israelites believed about the nature of the future agent of God who would destroy the wicked and redeem Israel, it seems that by the beginning of Jesus' ministry, some Jews had high expectations for the one they called Messiah, Son of God, or Son of Man. These generic terms in earlier centuries were later used as titles for one specific individual who would redeem Israel. This divine agent of God would not be a Messiah, but the Messiah. Not just a Son of God, but the Son of God. not just a king, but the King of Kings. Not just a Son of Man, but the Son of Man. So let us recap what we learned from pre-Christian Jewish texts regarding messianic expectations leading up to the ministry of Jesus. And these aren't found among all people, but we find this in the literature scattered around, and there's a spectrum of belief in the Messiah. But here's what they are. Number one, he would be a pre-existent figure with some divine qualities, and to others, he was just a human warrior king. All people would worship him. He would be a king. He would reestablish the Davidic dynasty. His kingdom would be everlasting. He would have authority over all nations. He would lead Israel, specifically Israel. He would judge the wicked and overthrow Israel's foreign enemies. He would be associated with righteousness, and he would heal the sick, restore sight to the blind, and raise the dead. The question I have for my students is, what is the one expectation missing in this list that Christians would assume should be on the list? The answer is that the Messiah would be humiliated, subdued by his enemies, embarrassed by his enemies, and killed. A humiliated Messiah. That is not in this list. It does show maybe a few places, but overwhelming expectations do not have that. So again, we must be careful not to assume that all Jews expected the Messiah to be and do all of these things. Some Jews may have expected some of these outcomes while rejecting others. So this list is simply a conglomeration of what is apparent in pre-Christian Jewish texts regarding messianic expectations. So there is one text, I should mention, there is one text that seems to suggest that the Messiah would be killed, and this is 4th Ezra. This is a late first century text, and it says, "For my son the Messiah shall be revealed with those who are with him, and those who remain shall rejoice 400 years. And after these years, my son the Messiah shall die, and all who draw human breath." This is an ambiguous text. In this text, the Messiah will not be humiliated and killed by his enemies, but will die alongside with all other humans after 400 years. Further, this text dates to the 1st century CE and so in other words, it might not tell us much about messianic expectations in the 2 centuries preceding Jesus' ministry. So we have to be careful with that. Some scholars, or even just non-scholars, may challenge the conclusion that early Jews did not expect a suffering, defeated Messiah. And they do this by some might do this by pointing to the suffering servant passage in Isaiah 53, verses 3 through 7. It's the most contested verses in the Hebrew Bible. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity. And as one from whom others hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him of no account. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried our diseases, yet we account him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, and we have all turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before it shears is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Okay, there's 5 verses, and this is very contested. Jewish commentators in late antiquity and throughout the Middle Ages disagreed on the nature of the servant in Isaiah. Some interpreted this to be referring to the Messiah, and others to Israel. Regardless, it seems that this messianic prophecy was overshadowed by the many other expectations of a victorious Messiah in the 2 centuries leading up to Jesus. Scholars of Messianism have shown through extensive examination that all of the messianic passages in pre-Christian Jewish texts, that the idea of a suffering Messiah was virtually non-existent. We must note that Daniel 9 refers to an anointed one, a Mashiach, who will be cut off and shall have nothing. But it is also ambiguous whether this passage suggests that this figure will be humiliated and ultimately killed. Could it be that this figure will be defeated for a time and then after that conquer his foes? We don't know. What we can say is that the few passages in the Hebrew Bible, like this one in Daniel 9, are overshadowed a great deal in other early Jewish texts by a victorious Messiah. That the messianic expectations did not include a suffering, dying Messiah is crucial. This is very crucial to understanding the events immediately following Jesus' death. We must remember that not all Jews held a normative set of beliefs about the Messiah's divine status, whether he was divine or mortal. Nor did all Jews uniformly expect the Messiah to accomplish a specific set of tasks. As we have seen, the various Jewish texts predating Jesus posited a wide variety of messianic expectations and ideas about the divine status of a future Messiah.